I've seen a lot of references lately to mysteries that weren't necessarily mysteries and thrillers that people have been calling mysteries when they're really thrillers. And this probably matters to no one except for me because of how I think about things. But I thought I would do a really short video about what is a mystery and what is a thriller, in case it's helpful to anybody else who thinks like me and is looking for a clear definition. Now, this probably will not do anything to help going into a bookstore and categorizing things, because if your bookstore is like mine, everything is shelved under mystery thriller at this point. So it's all smushed together, and it's really up to you on the synopsis of the book to make a decision about which category it fits into if you're looking for one versus another. But I have a little bit of a PowerPoint that I put together just because that's how my brain works. And I thought I would share it with you and tell me if you think that it's helpful. So at the very beginning, I'm going to start with categorizing all of these books as crime fiction instead of calling them mystery/thriller. Let's just give it a different name to differentiate it and stick with the tried and true crime fiction. So let's talk about mystery first. Mysteries are what came first. It's the old school. It is the whodunit. So in a mystery, we have a crime that has either been committed or that is going to be committed, generally in the first few chapters. And I'm going to use the word generally a lot here because I'm talking about the vanilla path here. Of course, there are people who step out of that mold and do things differently, but let's just go with the straightforward and use the term generally. So generally, the crime is committed in the first few chapters. And then the remainder of the book is us sitting with some type of a sleuth and learning what they learn along the way and figuring out who done it. So if you're like me, these are my favorites. I love the puzzle element of it, and I want to try to figure it out along with the sleuth and see if I can figure out who done it. Now, a thriller, to me, traditionally, was something that could have a crime taking place, but it could also be the protagonist trying to prevent a crime from taking place. So either prevent it or figure out why it happened. Often it's more important why it happened than who did it. Frequently in thrillers, we know who did it. We watch them do it or we see it happen. But it's really that, why did they do it? Why are they doing it? That becomes important. And I would say up until about 10 years ago, the ticking clock element was really what set the thriller apart. It was the race to stop something from happening, whether there was going to be a bomb going off or an attack of some kind or a murder. Our protagonist was trying to prevent something from happening, and you were on the edge of your seat. Those were the things that got turned into action-adventure movies. And those were really the true thrillers back in the day. But about 10 years ago, there seemed to be a little bit of a twist, and thrillers became more, I'm not going to say psychological, but really became this literary genre that was explaining why somebody was doing something versus then stopping something from happening. If we take it down to the next level next and we look at the sub-genres of each, for mysteries, I'm really going to focus on who the protagonist is, and that's how I define my subgenres for mysteries. So police procedurals, if our protagonist is a detective in the police force, or any type of police officer, FBI agent, law enforcement professional, I would consider those police procedurals. We have a lot of amateur sleuths. We'll talk about those in a minute. But traditionally, if you think of someone like Miss Marple, she's an amateur sleuth. We see a lot of cozy mysteries. We'll talk about those in a minute as well, who have people who have regular day jobs, but they're thrown into this case for various reasons and they want to figure it out. So they're amateur sleuths. These days, we see a lot of podcasters trying to figure out things. Next, private detectives. So a little bit different from law enforcement. If someone hires you and you do this professionally, you're a private detective. It has a little bit of a different note. And then we have things like forensic and legal. So sometimes we have doctors and lawyers who are on a case and they want to figure it out. And they actually are working with the police in some instances working against the police. But the main protagonist is either a doctor or a lawyer. And then we have the fan favorite animal protagonists. There are a lot of cat mystery solvers. There's even sheep mystery solvers in Leonie Swan's series. So lots of different animals have gotten in on the game of solving mysteries. Within those subgenres, though, we can have specific tones. So this makes it even more confusing because there's subgenres and different aspects even within those subgenres. So we can have the hard-boiled, the noir detective, who can be either a private detective or a police officer most frequently, but could also be the tortured soul amateur sleuth who is trying to solve this crime and the loner, etc. We have comedic in tone. Think of Finlay Donovan is Killing It as comedic mystery. Janet Ivanovich writes comedic mysteries. And then we have just the standard cozy. So isn't really fitting into hard-boiled or comedic, but is something that makes you feel like the violence is going to be all off screen and it's just going to be a person I can relate to solving the crime. And I hate to say it, but it is. These are comfortable reads. To break it down to the even more granular level, mysteries are situational, especially with amateur detectives. We see mysteries set in restaurants, in bookstores. We see paranormal mysteries where a police officer may be a wizard or a ghost. Historical mysteries generally fall into this more cozy, unless we get, old school police officer even before there were police forces figuring things out. We have locked room mysteries where, especially in the case of a murder, sometimes a heist, it seems impossible. How did they get into the room to do this? And we have to figure that out. We then have mysteries that have some elements of romance, gothic elements, kind of pairing with that paranormal, but not necessarily paranormal, just spooky. Dark academia, nautical, innkeepers, and holiday mysteries. There are a ton of Christmas mysteries. So that really summarizes the mystery subsection. So let's flip over then to thriller and let's talk through the subgenres there. Now, this is a really hotly debated topic and people feel passionately about this, where I frequently want to know, is this a police procedural? Is this a cozy? Does it take place in a bakery? The family owns a construction company. Those are all things that I think fellow readers of cozies like to know to categorize the books that we want to pick up. But some people get really upset and don't want to know the subgenre of a thriller. They figure that if you tell me too much about it, it's going to ruin the twist. And that's really the thing about thrillers today, where they started out being beat the clock, race to solve something, this element of time component. Really now thriller seems to be more focused on there being some type of a twist and an aha of got you that the writer is putting into things. And so if I tell you it's a psychological thriller, it's a familial thriller, legal thriller, etc., people get upset. They don't want to know don't tell me it's a psychological thriller, just tell me it's a thriller. And readers seem to be much more comfortable just putting everything into the big bucket of thriller versus mystery genres and subgenre and breaking it down and breaking it down and breaking it down, the granularity that readers want to know. I think that's really interesting. I personally would want to know because I have very slim categories of thrillers that I actually like. So I'm not big on spy thrillers or political thrillers. And so I would want to know ahead of time. And generally you can tell when you read the synopsis, you're hearing about a lobbyist in Washington or somebody who's in the CIA, etc. So I think you do know to a certain level the categories that these fall into. When you hear about a family on a yacht or an advocate attorney for a child whose parents are going through a divorce, you know that those are going to be familial thrillers. I don't think that there's a big surprise on any of this. One final differentiator about thrillers from mysteries is that often the crime or the thing that happens takes the entire book to happen. Sometimes it's happened and then we get the flashback and we walk through all of the events leading up to it. But frequently we are with the author being introduced to a cast of characters and we get a lot of narrative jumping. Maybe all of the characters or 2 or 3 of the characters are doing first-person narration in alternating chapters, leading us up to what happens. And we are learning about them, we are learning about the other people involved. We get the setting of the stage of why this happened, which again, I would say is what thrillers are really doing in 2025. They're more focused on explaining the why. Now, a little bit of personal venting. For me, I think the reason that I prefer mysteries over thrillers is the intense plotting that goes on to write a mystery. Mysteries have to be planned out. The authors have to sit and think, what clues am I going to drop and when am I going to drop them? And who is going to be the red herring and when do I do that? And how do I get my detective to figure things out? You don't hear very many authors of true mysteries talking about writing by the seat of their pants. But I hear thriller authors quite frequently say that they do that. They get an idea for a twist or the surprise shock ending, and they just write a book around it. They see where the characters take them and follow this journey. And that's my criticism of thrillers. I think that there's only so many twists, and we've seen so many of them, that someone is taking a twist or a flavor of a twist that we've seen multitude of times before, and then they're writing a book around it, which is a lot of filler and just ultimately serves the point of explaining why the twist happened more than exploring these characters in great detail. So I can't even say it's a great character study. Definitely not a lot of plot. And in this race to produce a thriller every year, I do think stories are suffering, and we're not seeing really great thrillers. We're just seeing a lot of thrillers. That's one of the reasons why, if I'm asked for a recommendation, I'm probably always going to recommend a mystery over a thriller. There are some great thrillers, and I have recommended them before, but it's pretty infrequent for me to give a 5-star to a thriller these days. But I will gladly give reviews and call it out here on the channel if I find one. So really, that's it. I hope this is helpful to you if you were struggling about what is the difference between a mystery and a thriller. I know that people have been using them a lot interchangeably lately, and I just thought I would give my 2 cents from my viewpoint of how I define it personally. Now, Other people may define it differently, but this is a little bit of what I used to lecture on back when I was still teaching, especially about mysteries and talking about stereotypical characters in American mysteries, like the hard-boiled detective, the femme fatale, etc. Thrillers, like I said, have really, I think, changed in the last 10 years. So this is always going to be whatever the flavor is in popular mysteries and thrillers. I think you will always see thrillers morphing to that. Whatever has sold a lot of books, you'll see a few more very similar things pop up. Let me know if you found this interesting, and if you'd like to know more about definitions or categories, subgenres, etc. Tell your pets I said hi, and I'll see you next time.